Well, let's discuss this more now with motoring lawyer David Barton and GP Dr Sarah Jarvis. A very good afternoon to you both. David, if I could start to you, drug-alisers, a good idea or not?
I think there's long been something of an anomaly in this area of law. Drink driving has been with us for decades with clearly set limits, and there's been no reason why drug driving couldn't have caught up, but now it has. And I think the police have always had a difficulty in being able to quickly test for the presence of cannabis and cocaine, and that's now gone. The new devices apparently would take 3 to 8 minutes to test either positive or negative, following which the driver will then be processed.
And Sarah, in terms of the prescription drugs, I guess it helps people and it helps the police. If they do get stopped, they can say, well, look, this is what I've had, this is when I took it as well.
And importantly, what we've got here is 2 very different groups of drugs. So the ones which are never basically given on prescription, so cocaine and so on, and cannabis, they will have a sort of zero tolerance for those. So if you're positive to those, it doesn't matter whether you're fit to drive or not. You shouldn't be driving with them in your system. Whereas with the prescription drugs, so that's all the azepams, if you like, all the benzodiazepines, diazepam, Valium is the one that we know most, but things like nitrazepam, which is a sleeping tablet, clonazepam, which is used as a tranquilizer and sometimes for epilepsy, they'll be included in some morphine-based drugs. But the levels for those have been set much higher. So if you're taking them for prescription reasons, absolutely no reason to stop, but do speak to your GP and check with your GP whether they think you're driving. Most people who are taking these for prescription reasons will be taking fairly low doses compared to the levels that have been set.
David, in terms of the drugs like cannabis, cocaine, heroin, for example, how easy is it going to be to police, given that we're always being told about cutbacks being made to various forces up and down the country? Are they going to be the officers, the bobbies on the beat to be able to enforce this?
It's difficult to know. The proof will be once the legislation starts to bite tomorrow. It's never been an obstacle to prosecuting or detecting and prosecuting drink drivers. There's no reason why it should be an obstacle. People are either going to be stopped and tested, or they're going to be involved in accidents and they will be routinely tested in that way. The thing to bear in mind, the big difference between the legal and the illegal drugs is that those prescribed, there's a statutory defence available to people if they are over the limit set by the legislation, but have been taking those drugs in accordance with medical advice. They have a defence, and it is then for the Crown Prosecution Service to effectively defeat that and put it aside. So people are given safeguards, as well as the high levels for prescribed drugs. There's a statutory safeguard for them as well.
Sarah, from a medical point of view, are you surprised that it's taken such a long period of time for these new laws to be enforced? I mean, given the number of road traffic accidents related to drinking, obviously, and drugs.
I'm delighted they're here now. Yeah. Obviously, as a doctor, I would love to have seen them come in earlier, but I don't know how long it took for the technology. I suspect this may look like a very simple bit of kit, but it's probably terribly complicated. In the past, of course, people could be taken in and they could either have a breath test initially at the roadside, then they could go in and have a blood test or a urine sample. Of course, the levels for drink driving are fairly specific. For blood tests, they're different, of course, in Scotland, and this rule is not going to come in Scotland. The levels for drink driving in Scotland are much lower than they are in England, but actually this rule, as far as I'm aware, is not coming in Scotland.
That is right.
Yeah, that's right. But it may well be that it was very difficult, because if you're under the influence of alcohol, it's possibly slightly easier to work out. And certainly I'm delighted to see that the rules will say, even if you've got such a small amount of cannabis or cocaine in your system that it's not impairing your ability to drive, that's no defence. I'm delighted to see that.
David, can you see more stringent laws being enforced, or is this as far as it goes?
It's taken quite a lot of years to get this set of legislation in, and it's been something of a flagship task for the Department for Transport. So it's difficult to see what would be in the pipeline. This is a major change. Part of the attempts by the government to bring about and reinforce the culture change that drink driving is just unacceptable. So is drug driving. It's unacceptable because it causes misery for many people who are affected, both for the families of those who are injured or worse.
So can you see that culture change happening?
I can see it changing, and I really think we will change it. We've gone a long way from when it was considered almost a bit of a laugh to have encouraged somebody to drink before they drove. These days, if you say to your friends, I will often say to my patients, you know, if you want to try and reduce the amount of alcohol, tell them that you're driving, because if they're trying to make steps to reduce their alcohol intake, it can be very difficult when you're in social situations. These days, if you say, I'm driving, nobody will quibble. But the other thing that I think would be really good to see here would be just a reminder to people that actually, although we have got these diazepam or diazepam-like drugs and morphine included, there are other drugs that can affect your ability to drive. And I'd really like maybe to see people more aware of how much of an impact drugs can have. If you look in your patient information leaflet, with many medications that are given for pain, for epilepsy, for nerve pains in particular, they can make you drowsy. I'd like to see people more aware of that, perhaps thinking twice before they drove, even if they're not the drugs covered by this legislation.
David, how difficult is it, or would it be, to make people aware in terms of, I know, say if somebody's learning how to drive and, you know, they're late teens, is there a policy that can be put in place in order to make young people aware of the dangers?
I'm sure that as part of the theory test, potential young drivers are made aware. I've spent some of my time in Kent going to schools and talking to groups of young people who are on the point of starting lessons or taking their tests. And this is areas that I cover with them. And one of the things I have found is a surprising lack of knowledge. A lot of them don't know. They will guess, how much alcohol can I safely drink before I'm over the limit? Well, I think the position with drugs is going to be, well, the answer to that question is virtually none. So I think that along with the cultural change, or part and parcel of it, is going to need to be something of an educational nature as well.
Well, we hope this new law will make a serious difference. Yes. David, Sarah, many thanks for your time.
Thank you.